So, are there times where you feel like you need to be an actor? You need to be someone else who are older may not have heard about masking, but definitely the younger generation, it's all about masking. And so for me, there's different kinds of masking, believe it or not. So that becomes part of when you're wired differently. We really have to break down the situations and the context. Hi, I'm Maren, and I help people who are neurodivergent to create real life solutions and strategies that are going to work for you. And understanding is one of those strategies that's really helpful. The more that we understand and we know how to think about something, the easier it can be to both live our lives and apply things to our lives. So, are there times where you feel like you need to be an actor? You need to be someone else? I know I have. So at times when I was teaching, it's like, okay, I may have had a really bad day. The cat may have thrown up, other stuff happened. I may have had a fight with my husband. And yet, when I'm going and being that professional and I'm being the teacher, I need to be the teacher. I also, so people would tell me, like, you've got that teacher voice. And it was true. I also taught juvenile delinquents for 8 years. And it was really important that I could command the class. That's where, believe it or not, I'm not all that tall. People don't think of me as being scary. And yet, I needed to have command of that classroom. And so you could develop that. So it is like putting on a different, okay? So sometimes that's kind of what I think masking is like. When we first find out we have ADHD or we're not sure about it, because I remember way back when, before I was diagnosed, things would be kind of fuzzy. And I would not be what I call now is like the packed snowball, where it's like, oh, yes, I really know how I feel. I know that at times, if the allergies are kicking up, if there's certain food I eat where my brain gets fuzzy, so people will call it brain fog, brain fuzziness. Sometimes it would just be, oh, you're being an airhead, so that's where you're daydreaming. You're out in space. I also called it kind of being in the cobwebs or kind of being in the fun house because people at times are like, how are you feeling? I had no idea. What do you like? I don't know. So I would look to others and people outside myself to sort of get feedback and know. So, in that, as part of that, depending upon who you were with or who I was with, you're with, you end up morphing a little bit. It's sort of like taking on some of those personas or different types. I was driving down south through the South with a friend because we were both he was going to his university to teach. And so I was going into the next state. So what happened is like the further south we got and the longer we were around people with the Southern accent, pretty soon he thought I was like teasing and making fun of them. But no, I just ended up taking on Southern accent because that's what I was hearing and then getting him to understand that. So at times people can think about like, oh, I'm masking. I have to go be someone else. So at times there are times where we're choosing where we need to be in that teacher role. Or if we don't know ourselves well enough, where we just morph because that's what neurodivergent, wired differently people often do until we get to know ourselves better and feel in. And then there is that kind of masking for me when I have to be around certain family and family events, or at times like going to a networking event. So that's where it's like, okay, but am I really masking? Because part of it is like I'm making a conscious choice, particularly in a professional networking event. I want to be seen as a professional. So if I come, how I'm dressed matters, doing some of this other stuff really makes a huge difference on how I'm going to be perceived. And that's important to me. But there's also going over the top and not being who you are. So it's really important to know who you are. But that's where, when I was first, like for a lot of my life, I didn't really know who I was. It was ever changing because I didn't have a really good sense of myself. And that goes back into other sensory stuff. So I think I talked about that in some other, newsletter, in some other video. So that's also something, if you want to know more about, you can email me and let me know, and we'll hook you up with those resources. Because I got to tell you, it is really hard at times to get that good sense of yourself, or then we become aware it's changing. I've got a real good sense now, but now it's shifting. And that's okay because it's about knowing the trueness, the realness of where you are in this moment. So masking for me is like when I have to go to a family event and I don't really want to be there. And I don't care to be there because it's really hard and it's challenging. I can take individuals at a family event, and I don't like having the large crowds. I don't like having the people, like, because everybody gets crazy. We had it when we were younger, where we had to get together and do these things. And that's where I would rather choose not to do it than to do it. And actually, I would, oh, I've got something else to do. I would make sure to go do those other things because that was my way of getting out of it. So masking to me is when you really are like, again, that fake smile, that fake. So there's a fake when we're not comfortable with something and we need to do it. We have to get better skills at it. There's also when we put ourselves in situations where we, again, have to be not like us. So then we have to, again, really look at what's going on. But with family events, it's like, okay, do I really have to be there? I know they want me to be there, but then I can also set parameters. It's like, okay, I want to see you before the event. I want to see you after the event. I'm only going to be at the event for, a half an hour. And then here's what I'm going to do. So here's my strategy. And then being honest that this is not comfortable for me. This is not what I would be choosing to do with my time. And then I also have to be away because my aunts, my uncles, my cousins at times have these expectations of doing things. I'm wired differently. What can I say? So when I have to pretend that I'm not wired differently, that is hard on me. And I really, again, sort of limit it. So if this has been useful information for you, I want you to share it. Okay, that's really important. And then I also want you to drop in the chat, like, what is the hardest thing for you about masking? Or when do you mask the most? And remember, when you're wired differently, there is hope, there are strategies that work, and you can create a life you love living.